Hello everyone. So this is my Void Knight Smite build. It's a multi-strike Smite build based around Void Knight. It's incredibly powerful. It can be uber aggro. It's uber viable. I'm doing like over 1,000 corruption right now and it's great. It's super easy and it's super fun and powerful. And I had so many thoughts on this build that I couldn't put it all into a video. So I've created a guide that I've linked in the description below that has like all the rest of like my different like thoughts and stuff all put into it. So this is just going to be a high level, more of something you guys can follow along for like if you need a quick version, and if you want reference, you can just go to the guide. So let's get into it, shall we? We are running Void Knight and we're using Multi-Strike. Multi-Strike is allowing us to use Smite with Hallowed Arsenal, and then we are using Blade Storm to converge all those smites onto the same target when there's only one target left. So we have 2 smites every time we hit, and then with Perfect Steel and Doctrine of the Anvil, we're turning that into 4 smites every time we auto. So that's incredibly powerful. We're smiting 4 times literally with every multi-strike. And then we're making Smite do as much damage as possible. It's a hit. We're doing Conflagration for 100% more damage there. Sacrifice for 250% more damage there. And then Conviction to cap out our crit, and Blinding Flash for a little bit of more damage, right? So that's basically what we're doing with Smite. We want to make sure to take all of the points in Atonement, so that way we're not losing HP, because for reasons that you'll see later, my version of the build cannot leech. If you have leech, I think dropping this many points in Atonement is fine. You can probably go down to like 4 points or maybe even 3 points and put those extra points towards either Blinding Flash or Deep Impact for that crit multi. So that's what we're doing there with Smite. After that, everything else is there to buff us up. So Symbols of Hope, we're getting 25% increased damage per point in symbols. So we have 5 symbols up with Tetragram and Polygram, with the default being 3. So we have 5 symbols. We're also getting 15% increased void damage per active symbol. So with both of those combined, we're getting essentially 200% increased damage. And then we also get 3 flat void damage per symbol, which turns into 15 void damage, and then a little bit of crit chance. So extra points that you put into this tree probably go into the crit chance. Then Devouring Orb, we're using it to get 20% more global void damage, and Abyssal Juggernaut, which gives us Void Essences. Void Essences will help regen our mana. And then we're also using it for Void Res Shred, and it has a chance to indirectly cast to only consume half of its cooldown. And so that way we can have more of it, so we can have more Shred. So that's Devouring Orb. We're using it for Shred and Mana Sustain and more damage. And then finally we have Anomaly. This is the only spell we actually cast, which is important. We're using it to get 90% increased crit chance, time level on you, increased attack and cast speed, and then 30% increased damage taken from Void for enemies, which is essentially a 30% more multi. So pretty powerful skill right there, right? So that's our skills. Item-wise, we are dual wielding, so this is a dual wielding build. We're taking the 8% increased damage taken, but we get 20% attack and cast speed as a result. So we get to use Wrong Warp, which we use to get the minus spell mana cost, and that pretty much makes our smites free. We then put a tier 7 spell critical strike chance on there just to cap our crit, and using a Wrong Warp gives us a good base on mana and spell damage, but it also gives us 2% increased spell damage per 1% increased move speed. And since I have 80% increased move speed, that's an additional 160% increased damage right there. From our offhand, we're using a sword. We're using Gladiator's Oath. There are a couple other options. You can use Polaris or Rainbow Edge. Both are very good. But I'm using Gladiator's Oath. It gives you up to 15% increased melee attack speed and I have 44% critical strike multi while dual wielding on there, but you can get up to 45%. So pretty good stats. And then on there, I have melee attack speed and armor shred. So all the stats I want. If you can get a 3 LP, you also want to put maybe spell damage would be a really good one. You can get flat spell damage on a prefix for a sword, or you can also get crit multi. So those are really good options for your sword prefixes. For my rings, I have a Penumbra, and that's because I'm running Apostate Sanctuary, which is my amulet. It gives me 2 health per vitality, which is the same thing as your Eternal Form from the Void Knight passive tree. So you double dip into that, which means you get 8 health per vitality rather than the normal 4. And it gives an additional 10 vitality at max and up to 14% more damage to bosses and rare enemies. So it's a huge damage increase for our build. The only downside is that when we use a spell, when we directly cast a spell, we lose 45% of our current health and ward, and we lose our health leech for 4 seconds, but that's why we have Penumbra, which is giving us 10 health gained on crit. It's giving us 7% increased move speed. It's giving us up to 25% critical strike multi, which is not a stat you can get on rings. And then I slammed a tier 7 increased spell damage on here. If you have a 2 LP, you want spell damage and void damage. Both of them give the same rolls. So one of them at tier 7 and the other one either a tier 5, 6, or 7 if you can get it there. We don't care about the rest of the affixes on here. All the rest of the text doesn't matter. We have a red ring as our other ring because we have plenty of stats and we have it with the tier 7 increased void damage. So pretty powerful ring. We want red ring because it gives us access to vitality with all attributes. So vitality is key, right? And it gives us the all res. So as you can see, I'm pretty close to res capped, a little bit shy on lightning and cold, but pretty much there. So that's what I would recommend there. Army of Skin is our boots of choice. It gives us up to 26% increased melee attack speed, which is a tier 7 basically. And it gives us move speed up to like 40% move speed, I believe. So it can be a lot of move speed. And then we're slamming vitality on there. If you have a 2 LP, I do have a 2 LP in my stash. I just haven't slammed it yet. You also want to get move speed on there. So those are the 2 best stats. And if you don't want to run this, you can run something like Violence Chariot. That's a pretty option. I have Immortal Vice and Shattered World, so I'm running them. But instead of Immortal Vice, you can also run Ravenous Void, which arguably might be better. It makes you incredibly tanky. You just need to have some cleanse to make it work. But since I had this, I wanted to use it. I've never used it before. It also gives you health and strength, which is cool, but it's pretty strong. And then you can also use the Blood Mage gloves as well because it gives flat spell crit, so that's also a really good option, especially if you haven't gotten your crit capped. And then Shattered Worlds, if you're not running this and you have access to it, I don't know why you wouldn't want to. You can get up to 5% crit chance. I'm min-rolled, so it's 1% for me, but you want +4 to smite on your relic no matter what. If you don't get that, all you need is a relic with +4 to smite, and then you can cap your resistances and get some other stats on there. You know, not a big deal. So I would definitely just recommend getting a tier 7 +4 to smite on your relic, and then if you get Shattered Worlds, that's cool. If not, whatever. So that's my key items, and then we have Brewmaster's Buckle, which gives us up to 10 vitality, so it's just best in slot, right? Getting a 2 LP is pretty easy to farm. And then from our body armor, because we're dual wielding, we either have the choice of running Null Portent, which is pretty solid, but I wanted to run my Primordial Affix on my body armor, so I did. And so I have a tier 8 increased spell void damage and spell void damage. So I have a bunch of increased damage and flat damage just from this. And then I also have vitality over here. If you run Null Portent, I would say put a tier 7 vitality on there. And then maybe like a tier 5 increased void damage and spell void damage. Or maybe you can swap those if you want. But that's what you want from your Null Portent if you decide to run it. And as you can see, I'm very close to being able to cap out all my stats. Because my void resist is all I really care about, I don't really need to worry about overcapping my elemental resist, but it is a thing. And if you want to do it, you can, but half of my elemental damage turns into void damage anyways, so that bit is reduced. Okay, so I have Decayed Skull because I just wanted a little bit more armor mitigation applying to damage over time, and it also gives me an increase to void damage, so it's nice. But you don't need this all. A good Leonine's helmet or a Terror Crown is pretty much all you need, right? You want to get tier 7 increased void damage and spell void damage on here, and then vitality and health. Those are ideal. And if you end up running Null Portent, then you would want your helmet to be your slot for your Primordial Affix. Finally, to cap it out, make sure to run these Humble Idols that have vitality on them and spell damage. You can get up to 5 vitality on the prefix and 4 spell damage on the suffix, so that's up to 9 flat damage from each one, as well as 20% increased damage from each one. So there's a lot of damage over there, and if you need it and you can't find it, then you can get these long idols with vitality and armor shred. That's pretty good. And then you can also get woven affixes of crit chance and crit multi, or move speed and increased damage. Both of them are really good for us, so either one works. And then from blessings, mana, armor, all res, and crit multi. That's all you really care about. So then finally, I'm going to go through the passives. From Sentinel, you want to max out your Vitality, get some points into Juggernaut, maybe max out Armor Clad. It's not something I'm doing, but you probably want to. Time and Faith, max it out for that mana gained. Get Gladiator for the attack and cast speed, and then Blade Master to get an additional 30%. So you're essentially getting 50% attack speed just from dual wielding, right? And then Void Knight, you kind of want all your points here. So Abyssal Endurance, Void Corruption, Dark Maw, those are some really important early ones, and then just fill them out to get to the next set, which is Renouncement. Whoa, you want 5 points in that. Singular Purpose, because the more damage is great. And then Echoing Strikes, those are all very important. You want to put 1 point in Essence of the End just so you can get to Void Well for the mana regen, so you have infinite mana sustain basically. And then Eternal Form gives you a ton of increased health, and it gives you the health per vitality that you're also getting from your Apostate Sanctuary, right? So pretty huge there. And then you want to go fully into Mortal Cleave and Abyssal Fluctuation, and any leftover points you're going to put into Paladin, because you want to get to a Symbols of Hope. So you're going to put 8 points into Defiance, 1 point into Phoenix Strike just so you have your Ignite chance, and then 6 points into Valor. And then finally, any additional points that are left over, cap out the stuff inside Void Knight, and if you have anything left over, put it into Time Legion. So enough said and done. That's pretty much a quick version of the build. You've probably been watching footage in the background. This build does so much damage, right? It does so much damage. If you need it, go check out the build guide in the description below. I put a lot of effort into it. I pretty much made sure to get everything I could think of into there. So all the nitty gritty details, I kind of tried to put them all in there just because I didn't want to bog you guys down right now. This is just a high level. If you want to get started, please refer back to the guide if you have questions in the future. Yes, I've eaten all the content in the game with the exception of Ravenous on this build. And it's not because I can't do it. It's just, as a melee, it's not as fun, right? So this can do any content in the game. I've seen other people do it. I'm clearing over 1,000 corruption already on this build. So that is what it is. Hope you guys are enjoying the game, and I'll see y'all later. Peace.